In 1987, the Food and Drug Administration made it illegal to ship raw milk across state lines. Your grandmother carried that milk from the barn every morning in a pail, whole and unpasteurized, and still warm, the same way her mother did, and her mother before that. She never asked permission. Neither did 300 years of American families before her. Number 8 on this list was in every pharmacy until the exact year one industry realized it could never be patented. Number 3 was a remedy naval surgeons carried on Magellan's ships. Before we start, hit subscribe. What you are about to hear is not alternative medicine fantasy, it is American history. Number 15, the hand pump well. Before utility hookups were mandatory, your great-grandfather walked out to a hand-dug well every morning and pulled up what he needed. No meter, no permit, no licensed contractor. Today, most counties require a licensed driller and a health department inspection, and some municipalities mandate a city water hookup regardless of whether you want one. Your great-grandfather dug his with a shovel and a rope and no permission from anyone. Number 14, the rainwater barrel. In Colorado, catching rain falling on your own roof was a criminal act until 2016, not a gray area. It was illegal under state water rights law, which classified precipitation as state property the moment it hit the ground. House Bill 16-1005 finally permitted residents to collect rainwater, but limited collection to 2 55-gallon containers for outdoor non-potable use only. Your grandfather built his first flush diverter from bent tin, a simple pipe that let the first dirty runoff bypass the tank before clean water flowed in. A single inch of rain on a 1,000 square foot roof delivers over 600 gallons. He knew this the way he knew the angle of the autumn sun. 2 barrels is what the state of Colorado decided the sky above his property was worth. Number 13, the sassafras bark tea. Walk behind any farmhouse in the eastern United States before 1960 and you might find a sassafras tree with the bark half stripped. Your great-grandmother brewed the root bark for fever and spring tonics, for what she called cleaning the blood. Charles Hires had been building a commercial empire on the same plant since 1875, marketing Hires root beer as a healthy alternative to alcohol. In December 1960, the FDA banned safrole, the primary compound in sassafras oil, under the Delaney Clause, after studies showed liver tumors in rats fed doses equivalent to 32 bottles of root beer per day. Hires reformulated using artificial flavoring. The label stayed roughly the same. The product was not. The tree still grows wild at the edge of every farm in the eastern half of the country, and the bark is still there. Number 12, the wild crafting walk. Your grandmother walked hedgerows and meadows, filling her apron with echinacea, elderberry, valerian, plantain, and St. John's wort. No license, no permit, no label. She dried what she found on wooden racks under the porch eaves and gave it to anyone who came to the door sick. The real technique was transmission, woman to woman, generation to generation, which plants, which season, which preparation. Today, selling any wild-crafted herb with a health claim, even the phrase supports immune function, makes it a drug under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, requiring FDA approval that costs on average $2.6 billion and takes 10 to 15 years. Your grandmother did not make claims. She made tea, poultice, and tincture. The knowledge is not illegal. The commerce around it has been priced beyond reach. Number 11, the comfrey poultice. Comfrey's Old English name is knit bone. That name tells you everything about what generations believed it did. Broken bones, sprains, deep bruises, wounds that would not close. The active compound is allantoin, which promotes cell proliferation and tissue repair. Your grandmother grew it at the corner of the kitchen garden and packed crushed leaves onto injuries that needed help fast. After studies found comfrey root contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids that can cause liver damage with long-term internal use, the FDA issued warnings against ingestion, and Germany and the United Kingdom banned internal comfrey products entirely. What happened next is worth noting. Allantoin was isolated, synthesized, and patented. It is now the active ingredient in prescription wound healing creams retailing at $40 per tube. The plant costs nothing to grow. The ingredient that comes out of it now requires a prescription. Number 10, the castor oil cure. In 1950, a small bottle of castor oil at any general store cost 39 cents. Your grandfather kept one on the shelf year-round. A tablespoon cleared sluggish digestion. A flannel cloth soaked in warm castor oil, laid across the abdomen overnight with a hot water bottle on top, was standard practice for deeper complaints, what the old-timers called moving the system. The technique required nothing beyond the bottle, the cloth, and patience. The FDA still approves castor oil as an over-the-counter laxative, but the broader therapeutic use is dismissed as folk practice with no clinical basis. The American pharmaceutical laxative market reached $1.3 billion in U.S. sales in 2022. The bottle of castor oil at Walmart is $12 today. The compound has not changed. The margin around everything beside it has. Number 9, the herb garden dispensary. Under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, any herb sold with a disease claim becomes a drug. Legally, not metaphorically. Your grandmother could grow elderberry, brew it, and hand it to the neighbor's child with a cold and face no consequence. The moment that neighbor's daughter prints a label that says elderberry for immune support and sells 10 jars at the Saturday farmers market, the FDA has enforcement authority. The agency has issued warning letters to small herbal companies for exactly that phrase. What I find worth saying plainly is this: the knowledge itself is not a crime. Sharing it is not a crime. What has been made impossible is doing for a living what your grandmother did for love, at a scale that could compete with the industry that replaced her. Number 8, the silver solution. Before penicillin, silver was medicine. Physicians used silver nitrate, colloidal silver, and silver preparations for wound infections, urinary tract infections, and respiratory disease. Silver throat sprays and nose drops sat on pharmacy shelves through the 1930s. Penicillin became commercially available in 1945. Within a decade, silver had been quietly removed from most formularies. In 1999, the FDA issued Final Rule 21 CFR 310.548, ruling that all over-the-counter colloidal silver products were misbranded, citing insufficient scientific evidence. Nobody owned silver. It is an element. Nobody could patent it, build an exclusive supply chain around it, or set a reimbursement rate for it. Everybody could patent antibiotics. The math was simple. A bottle of colloidal silver at a 1930s pharmacy cost less than $1. A colloidal silver supplement today sells for $30 to $50, and the label warns that no disease claims are made. I want to stop here for a moment because I think the pattern is worth naming out loud. Every practice on this list so far either could not be patented, could not be manufactured at scale, or directly competed with something that could. Sassafras had to be banned before it could be reformulated and resold. Comfrey's allantoin had to become a drug before anyone could charge $40 for it. Silver could not be monetized because nobody owns an element. This is not a conspiracy. It is documented economics. It shows up in the Federal Register with specific dates and rule numbers. Number 7, the Ma Huang chest tea. For 5,000 years, Chinese medicine used Ma Huang, known in the West as ephedra, for asthma, congestion, and chest ailments. It opened airways. It was brewed as a tea from the dried whole plant, a modest preparation refined over millennia. In the 1990s, supplement companies began loading high-dose ephedrine alkaloid extracts into weight loss pills and marketing them aggressively. From 1993 to 1997, at least 34 deaths and 800 serious adverse events were linked to those products. In 2004, the FDA banned all dietary supplements containing ephedrine alkaloids. The traditional Ma Huang tea was swept out alongside the synthetic concentrates that caused the deaths. The active compound, pseudoephedrine, was isolated, synthesized, and sold as Sudafed. Today, Sudafed requires a government-issued ID and is logged in a federal database under the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act of 2005. Your grandfather brewed the plant in a pot. You now sign a federal form for its synthetic version at the pharmacy counter. Number 6. The bone broth pot. American hospitals served bone broth on patient trays through the early 20th century as a matter of course. Basic restorative food, easy to digest, rich in minerals and gelatin. Your grandmother kept a perpetual pot on the back of the stove, replenished from bones the butcher sold for 5 cents a pound or gave away entirely. Low heat, a long simmer, nothing wasted. By the 1960s, hospital dietary services had replaced real broth with Campbell's condensed soup, introduced in 1897, and by then the institutional standard. The perpetual pot was reclassified as superstition. The bone broth market is now approaching $3 billion a year, driven largely by collagen peptide supplements, retailing at $40 to $60 per canister. The science behind it, collagen and gelatin, supporting gut lining integrity and joint health, is what your grandmother described without any of the terminology. Number 5. The lard jar. In 1955, lard cost 25 cents a pound, and every stove in America had a jar nearby. Your grandmother baked biscuits with it, fried chicken in it, and smoothed it on cracked winter hands. Procter & Gamble introduced Crisco in 1911, a hydrogenated cottonseed oil originally developed as a soap base, and spent the equivalent of millions of dollars convincing America it was cleaner, safer, and more modern than the fat that had fed every generation before it. In January 1961, Ansel Keys appeared on the cover of Time magazine, and the American Heart Association endorsed his diet heart hypothesis. What the public did not know until 2016, when internal documents were published in JAMA Internal Medicine, was that the Sugar Research Foundation had paid Harvard researchers the equivalent of $500,000 to publish a 1967 review downplaying sugar's role in heart disease and shifting blame to fat. McDonald's switched from beef tallow to partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. In 2020, the FDA banned partially hydrogenated oils from the U.S. food supply entirely. The thing that replaced the lard was banned. The lard was never the problem. Number 4. The raw milk jug. Your grandmother carried milk from the barn in a pail, whole, unpasteurized, still warm. Every family with a cow or a neighbor's cow drank it that way for 3 centuries. In 1987, the Food and Drug Administration issued 21 CFR 1240.61, banning the interstate shipment of raw milk for human consumption. 20 states have since restricted or prohibited even intrastate sale. Federal agents conducted armed raids on small dairies in Pennsylvania in 2011 and California in 2012. The industrial dairy consolidation that preceded the ban was not coincidental. Small farms that could not compete on volume needed the raw milk market closed. 31 states now allow some form of raw milk sale, often through herd share arrangements. Organic raw milk, where legal, sells for $10 to $14 per half gallon. The knowledge is worth having, even if the access is complicated. I have gone back and forth about how plainly to say this. What changed between your grandmother's kitchen and the modern grocery store was not chemistry. The raw milk did not change, the sassafras tree did not change, the silver did not change, the lard did not change. What changed was who profited from what replaced them. Some addressed real problems, but when you look at who lobbied, who funded the science, and who benefited from the replacement product, the pattern is not random, it is in the record. Number 3, the pine resin dose. Ferdinand Magellan's fleet carried gum spirits of turpentine as standard medical supply during the first circumnavigation of the globe in the early 16th century. Naval surgeons used it for wound care and intestinal parasites through the entire age of sail. The 1899 Merck Manual listed turpentine among the materia medica in active use by American physicians. Venus turpentine, manufactured by Magnus, Mabey, and Reynard of New York, sold for 15 cents at apothecary shops at the turn of the 20th century. The FDA today classifies gum spirits of turpentine as a hazardous substance for internal use, and poison control centers list it as a household toxin. And yet the FDA also lists gum turpentine as an approved food flavoring permitted in candies and condiments. The same substance is a poison on the hardware store shelf and an approved flavoring in your candy. A pharmaceutical anthelmintic prescription costs $150 to $300 today. It smelled like a pine forest and cost 15 cents. Number 2, the clay and charcoal draw. Your grandmother kept hardwood charcoal in a pouch in the kitchen and a jar of bentonite clay beside it. Charcoal stirred into water for food poisoning and upset stomachs, given early. Clay poulticed onto infected wounds for drawing out the bad. Activated charcoal is standard treatment in hospital emergency rooms for poisoning and drug overdose. The FDA does not recognize activated charcoal as an approved food additive under 21 CFR Part 184, and the Association of Food and Drug Officials has formally petitioned the FDA to restrict its retail use. Bentonite clay for internal use has no FDA-approved status at all. The compound the emergency room reaches for in a crisis is the same one your grandmother kept by the stove. The difference is not the charcoal. The difference is who gets to administer it and who sends the bill. Number 1. Total self-sufficiency. This is the philosophy that connects everything else on this list, and it is the one I come back to most often. Your great-grandmother did not call what she did health care. She did not have a deductible or a referral or a subscription. She had a routine: cold water from the well, broth on the back burner by noon, elderberry for the children in winter, clay on a wound that would not close. No third party approved it, manufactured it, or billed for it. The system that replaced that routine is the most expensive healthcare apparatus in human history. Americans now spend more per capita on healthcare than any country on earth. The practices on this list were not miracles. They were the accumulated attention of people who had no other option but to pay close attention to what was immediately around them. Somewhere between 1950 and now, we were taught to distrust the people who raised us in favor of the people who invoice us. Every item on this list is a piece of that story. Here is your challenge. Pick one. Just one. Find a comfrey plant this week and learn what it looks like. Buy a bottle of castor oil. Look up whether raw milk herd shares are legal in your state. Every practice on this list is recoverable. None of it died. It went quiet because quiet was profitable for someone else. The knowledge belongs to you, and it belonged to your family long before anyone thought to sell it back. Tell me in the comments which one your family used. Tell me if there is still a sassafras tree behind the house where you grew up. Tell me what your grandmother kept on that shelf. I promise you somebody in your family tree knew every last thing on this list.